The NHL postseason never disappoints. As fans, even though our teams may not always be in a winning situation, you have to admit the entertainment level is always off the charts. Highlight reel goals, huge hits, and nail-biting OT moments, you just have to love playoff hockey. But sometimes in between these amazing moments, we'll see some weird, crazy, and bizarre plays that we've never seen before and will most likely never see happen again, and that is what this video is about. Here are the top 6 most bizarre NHL playoff moments. The Sean Avery rule. One of the NHL's most notable pests was Sean Avery, who took things to such an extreme that he once made the NHL change one of its rules in the middle of a playoff series. It was the 2008 first round between the New York Rangers and the New Jersey Devils, and during a first period power play early in the series, Avery, then playing for the Rangers, attempted to screen Devils goalie Martin Brodeur by turning his back to the play and waving his arms and hands in Brodeur's face. Naturally, Brodeur and the Devils were not amused. They were even less amused on the Rangers' next rush into the zone on that same power play that led to Sean Avery actually scoring a power play goal. Forget waiting until the offseason, it didn't even take 12 hours for the NHL to issue a new interpretation of its unsportsmanlike conduct rule to cover actions like Avery's. Marty McSorley's illegal stick. Marty McSorley is one of the NHL's most infamous players that is known mostly for being an enforcer and for his on-ice attack on Donald Brashear that not only resulted in him ending his own career, but also being convicted for assault and being sentenced to 18 months probation. Before all of that occurred, he was at the center of one of the most infamous incidents in Stanley Cup final history when he played for the LA Kings and was penalized for using an illegal stick in Game 2 of the 1993 Stanley Cup Finals against the Montreal Canadiens. With the LA Kings already owning a 1-0 series lead and clinging to a 2-1 lead in the final minutes of the third period, the Canadiens challenged McSorley's stick for having an illegal curve. After measurement, it was determined that the stick was in fact illegal, giving the Canadiens a late power play. Eric Desjardins scored the game-tying goal on the ensuing power play and then scored the winner in overtime to give the Canadiens a 3-2 win to even out that series. Now, you can't blame this on McSorley, but the Kings did not go on to win another game in that series. The Toronto Curfew. One of the great things about the Stanley Cup playoffs is the potential for a marathon overtime game that spills over into the early hours of the next morning. But what if the game was being played in a city that had a curfew that prohibited sporting events from going beyond midnight? Well, that actually used to happen in the city of Toronto. The last incident occurred during Game 2 of the 1951 semifinals between the Bruins and the Maple Leafs. After taking Game 1 in Toronto, the Bruins entered the game with the series lead and were involved in a nail-biter in Game 2 with the game going into overtime even at 1-1. But when it became clear that the game was going to go on past midnight, it had to be called due to the laws of the city. That was it. It ended in a 1-1 tie. The two teams played in Boston the next night, starting a new game that would see the Maple Leafs win 3-0. They would go on to win the next 4 games in a row by a combined score of 16-2 following that tie game. Then they played off against the Montreal Canadiens in the Stanley Cup Finals and won that in 5 games. All of those 5 games went into overtime, but none of them were impacted by the Toronto Curfew rule. Kevin Bieksa sends the Canucks to the finals. The 2011 Western Conference Finals turned out to be a relatively short series as the Canucks sent the Sharks packing in just 5 games. But San Jose didn't exactly go out easily. In Game 5, with the Canucks up 3-1 in the series, the Sharks held a 2-1 lead until Ryan Kesler forced overtime with less than 15 seconds remaining in the third period. The Canucks and the Sharks battled late into the Vancouver night as the first overtime solved nothing. As the game reached the midway point of the second overtime, the Canucks caught the luckiest break and Kevin Bieksa ended the series with one of the strangest goals in NHL history. Alexander Edler attempted to dump the puck in deep, but the puck took a bizarre bounce off the glass and wound up landing on Kevin Bieksa's stick in the high slot. Nobody on the ice besides Bieksa was even aware the puck was still in play. Joe Pavelski and Henrik Sedin began motioning to the officials that the puck had gone over the glass. With Antti Niemi's attention elsewhere, Bieksa one-timed the rolling puck right by the stunned goaltender, sending the Canucks to the finals for the first time since 1994. Steve Smith's own goal. In 1986, the two-time reigning Stanley Cup champions, the Edmonton Oilers, were heavily favored to win the Battle of Alberta against the Calgary Flames in the Smythe Division Finals. This series was an instant classic as the two teams traded wins back and forth until the series was knotted at 3 games apiece, setting up a decisive Game 7 in Edmonton. Heading into the third period, the Oilers and Flames were even at 2, but the deadlock didn't last long. Roughly 5 minutes into the final frame, an Oilers rookie defenseman named Steven Smith gathered the puck behind the Edmonton net and looked to move the puck up the ice. Unfortunately, that plan backfired and Smith's pass accidentally ricocheted off the back of goalie Grant Fuhr's skate and wound up in the back of the Oilers' net. That goal stood as the series clinching tally, and the Calgary Flames, with the help of Steve Smith, ended Edmonton's hope of a third consecutive Stanley Cup. The fog at the Buffalo Auditorium. Now I have to specify which fog game we're talking about because there were actually 2 notable fog games in the Stanley Cup Finals. Before the fog game in 1988, there was one in 1975 in Buffalo between the Flyers and Sabres that was played under very similar circumstances. Hot temperatures outside and a lack of air conditioning in the Buffalo Auditorium. There were 2 big differences between this one and the one in 1998 in Boston. First, the fog in Buffalo was significantly worse and prevented many fans in the building from actually seeing the game. And secondly, and oddly even more bizarre, this game featured a death of an animal when a wayward bat that had been disrupting the players was killed by Sabres forward Jim Lorentz when he swatted it out of midair with his hockey stick. Also, unlike the 1988 fog game in Boston, this one would end up being completed with the Sabres winning in overtime 5-4. However, they would not go on to win the series. Thanks for watching our videos. Don't forget to leave a like, and if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button.